January the 8th, around 200 million workers went on a two-day strike across India, bringing the country to a grinding halt. The strike was called by 10 central trade unions against the labour policies of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is the largest ever strike in world history and also the second massive general strike organised by the Indian trade unions against the Modi government. The first was in 2016, in which more than 160 million workers participated. Workers and unions to go on the streets on such a large scale. What are they asking for? How is Modi likely to respond? Joining me today from New Delhi is Srikanth Kondapalli, Chairman and Professor in Chinese Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and from Beijing I still have Einar Tangen, current affairs commentator. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. Professor Kondapalli, let me go to you first. Now, the two-day national strike has been prepared since last September to protest against what some analysts have called Modi government's pro-corporate and anti-worker attitudes. What are these policies exactly? Do you agree with such characterization?
Well, since the launch of the liberalization program in 1991, there is the first tranche of reforms that have been carried out by the Congress government before, and we have now been seeing a second tranche of reforms, which includes the goods and service taxes. Secondly, labor laws, that is recognizing any trade union as a part of the organized sector aspect. Thirdly, there is also the reforms that they intend to bring in terms of environmental protection. Fourthly, on land acquisition, because land belongs to that of the individual in India, and there are constitutional guarantees. So in terms of the infrastructure projects and so on, the government faced problems in acquiring land for the high-speed railways or for the highways. To that extent, there was these 4 legal measures which became problematic at the ground level, especially in terms of the labor laws. The number one is in terms of the recognition of trade unions. Secondly, in terms of hire and fire legislation, which has not yet been passed, but there was some move in this regard, because after the strikes in closer to Delhi in a Honda factory and in Suzuki factory, Maruti Suzuki factory, there was concerns expressed by the Japanese investors that labor unrest needs to be addressed.
Okay.
In addition to the other investors who have expressed concerns on those. Yeah,
so Professor Kondapalli, do you agree that these are anti-corporate, anti-worker policies?
Well, since 91, the effort has been to increase the GDP growth rates, which of course have now been risen. But the criticism has been GDP growth rate increase has not led to employment opportunities. I think this is a short to medium phase, because there is the trickling down effect that is expected by the government once the growth rates takes place, as in other countries where the growth rates have increased also the employment opportunities. In the case of India, the structure is problematic compared to other countries. Number one, the structure is such that the manufacturing sector is pretty low in terms of GDP figures. It's roughly about 16% of the GDP. As you know, manufacturing sector employs a large labor force,
right,
and the sector as such is very small. Second, the USP of Indian GDP is service sector.
Yeah, I'm afraid we won't have too much time to go into too much details, Professor Kondapalli. I'm afraid we won't have that kind of detail, but I get the gist of what you try to say. Let me go to Einar here. One of the striking labor organizations, which is the Center for India Trade Unions, criticized Modi for killing the work culture in the country's public sectors by favoring private players in major manufacturing contracts. Is that the case? And What kind of opposition do you think he's faced with when pushing forward the privatization of sectors?
Well, I think it's very important to start breaking down, this 150 to 200 million that they've been talking about who've hit the streets. First off, it's not unified. What you have there is a mixture of people who do not normally come together, who are just saying that they're unhappy. There are issues about employment, especially on the young. Remember, you're talking about a country where 60% of the people are under 30, and they're looking for jobs. And this is things. But the question is the cart and the horse. How do you get the economy going? There are great needs, and everyone agrees that there needs to be more investment. But you can't get investment unless companies feel that India is the place to be. So Modi is caught in this situation where he's trying to get his country going at the same time as satisfy the people, and you can't do all things at all times. And unfortunately, there have been some missteps in the past. The demonetization did not go as well as planned, but there has to be some sort of, and I agree with the professor, you cannot just stand still and listen to people who have lots of complaints but no solutions.
Yeah, well, it's risky to carry out reforms, and everywhere you move you're going to have opposition. However, one of his perceived failure is the ability to generate employment and contain price rise. Professor Kondapalli, this is considered to be one of the hot issues for the workers on the street. Prime Minister Modi won the election in 2014 on the slogan of Vikas, or progress, and he vowed to produce 10 million jobs every year, but he's accused to have been unable to deliver. Why? And is that a fair criticism again in your eyes?
Well, the inflation is down. Overall, if you take 4.5 years rule, it's about 4% roughly, and GDP cumulatively has also increased substantially. To that extent, I think kudos to the Prime Minister's policies. On the other hand, this has not led to, as everybody has mentioned, the employment growth rates. So that is partly because the public sector units are being broken down, and this has led to some kind of unemployment. Secondly, the unorganized sector also had faced substantial problems. So I think these are to an extent constraints.
So was it a problem
for the government?
Yeah, let me ask you here, Einar, was it a problem that he made these promises that are very, very tall order for him to deliver, or was it a problem that he's not able to fulfill these promises?
Well, a little bit of both. I mean, there was a lot of lag time in there when he was doing international visits and things like that. This was necessary to try to claim, and show that there was a new India, and he spoke for a different kind of environment. But at the same time, at home, things had kind of been delayed, and the 10 million jobs did not appear. I don't believe that the government has put out a jobs report since it started, and this is starting to build up. So he's going to have to make he's going to have to do something very dramatic prior to these elections, otherwise things are not looking good.
It's also been claimed that this is, besides being the largest ever strike in world history, also it has supports from different sectors. For instance, we're not just seeing workers striking, but also farmers and students from around the country. Professor Kondapalli, what are farmers and workers wanting from Prime Minister Modi that they're not getting?
Well, traditionally the agriculture sector has been pretty low in terms of GDP output. So I think this is one factor, that the investments in irrigation, investments in new technologies for increasing the agriculture production, that's the area of focus. Secondly, you mentioned about students and so on. There's been some cuts in the allocations to the education sector. There's also been some kind of privatization of these educational institutions. So the students have also been protesting because of this reason. Thirdly, I think the government is trying to enhance what is called as a Skill India program, but the educational system is kind of skewed in nature. We emphasize more on the higher education rather than vocational education. So I think there is a mid-course correction that is needed for this purpose.
So indeed, Modi is trying to do a very big project, and I would suppose that he's also trying to emulate China, the Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping, by being a great reformer to bring India into modernization. Einar, do you agree with this kind of comparison? Do you think he's likely to succeed?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily compare him to Deng. India is following its own course. I mean, there's a lot of hopes that are pinned on Modi. He came in with a majority, and they're hoping that he can move things along. The danger here is that he's had not had enough times, and right now, with the economic winds blowing a lot of uncertainty around the world, this is not going to help him either. He has to get through these next elections, and he has to start producing more jobs.
Is that why he's not likely to succeed, as Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping did?
Deng was quite amazing. He took a country that had no foreign investment, no internal investment, no very, very low resources, and he was able to attract people in. He did it in a little bit different way. I don't necessarily know that you have to compare them. I know that that both of them are dedicated to the country. The question is how you get it done in your respective things.
Of course, it's a provocative question, but Professor Kondapalli, what's your thoughts there? And also, do you think he might end up like Gerhard Schröder, losing his job because of his will to reform?
Well, Prime Minister Modi's personal ratings are pretty high, something like 47%, as compared to the opposition leader Rahul Gandhi with roughly about 17%. Although personality is not the only driving factor in the next elections. Having said that, I think there are some similarities with the Chinese case. Deng Xiaoping's southern tour in 1992 was meant basically for inviting investments, FDI, and establishing the special economic zones. I think Prime Minister Modi's 50-odd visits also are to the extent of inviting the investors. But of course, the house has to be made clean before you invite the investors. Which is what Prime Minister Modi is trying to do in terms of these legislations. Secondly, the investments in India have actually increased substantially. In fact, last year it's about $38 billion as compared to investments in China, about $37 billion. So to that extent, I think these foreign visits did provide that confidence. Secondly, the ease of doing business, India has jumped up nearly 70 points in the last 1 year or so, and essentially, as the other panelists mentioned, it's 26 years of age for the Indians, average age.
So we're going to leave
which
him.
Which means that, of course, the leadership needs to provide much more.
Yeah, but we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt, or the benefit of the trust for the moment. We're going to leave it there. Srikanth Kondapalli, Chairman and Professor at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, and Einar Tangen, a current affairs commentator. And with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.